come vape with me. A friend of a friend emailed me and said, could I tell her the best thing to do because she was thinking about vaping. So of course I went onto my channel to find a video that tells people exactly what to buy when they want to start vaping. And do you know, I've talked about this a lot, but it's all inside other videos that talk about e-liquid or tanks and other stuff. So I'm going to make today a video that tells beginners, new vapors, people thinking of switching from smoking to vaping, exactly what not to do and what to do, and various details thereof. So the first thing, and you'll know this if you've watched my videos, do not buy a Lookalikeee e-cigarette. That is a Lookalikeee. That's what we vapors call it. We call it a Lookalikeee because it looks like a real cigarette. Now, if you are wanting to dump real cigarettes, I cannot see the logic in buying something that looks like a cigarette. This one is very light. It's a disposable one. And new vapors often get this idea that this thing is going to substitute for smoking entirely. So it must look like a cigarette, it must be light, and they must hold it like a cigarette. And in actual fact, when you enter the vaping world, that is not really what happens. These things, this is a throwaway disposable one. I think it said on the box that it would be equivalent to about 40 cigarettes. Well, no manufacturer can possibly predict that. So if you look at one of the packs with Lookalikees on that say that say this is equivalent to 35 cigarettes or 40 cigarettes or anything, you know immediately your telling porkies banner should wave in your head and think that is not true. It can't be true. And the reason it isn't true is because every vapor, just like every smoker does, pulls longer or harder on the actual little tube of nicotine or tobacco. So we know even with cigarettes that some people draw longer and draw harder. So to say on a pack it will last you equivalent of 35 cigarettes is not true and cannot be told. So the first advice to somebody thinking of switching from smoking to vaping, forget about this image. This is not the best way to change from smoking to vaping. And the reason is, in your head, you must understand what you are wanting is the experience, the hit, the feeling of inhaling the smoke, excuse me, and the whole experience of smoking. And you don't get it by dangling one of these little Lookalikees in your fingers like a cigarette and then complaining because it's heavy or it doesn't actually duplicate the experience of smoking. So what should you go for? Well, all over now there are starter packs, and the starter pack has got an ego battery in it. Now this is an ego battery. It looks like a cylinder and it has that thing on the end of it. That is for screwing in the nicotine part of your PV. This is a personal vaporizer. It is not a Lookalikeee e-cigarette. So that is an ego battery. That's a 650 milliamp hour ego battery, and that should last, but it depends on what you put on this end. it should last about 6 hours. Here is another one. This is a 900 milliamp hour Ego battery. I'll put the words down here on the video. That is a bigger battery than this one, and I'll show you the difference. There's the little 650. That'll last you about 6 hours, and that one will last you 8 or 9 hours. So that is the difference in the size of the Ego batteries. You can get an even bigger Ego battery than that. It's longer and it lasts longer because inside there's more battery. Now remember, when you buy an electronic cigarette device, so the device is the whole electronic cigarette, this battery is a replaceable item. It will only last you 6 months or maybe more. And I do have some Egos that have lasted me a year. So how long your battery lasts depends on the quality of the battery, how you use it, whether you drop it often, whether you are erratic in charging it, all sorts of things. So the battery itself will have to be disposed of by a proper battery disposal shop or collection point in your country. In the UK, Aldi's collect batteries to recycle. So an Ego battery is something that you will have to buy more of every 6 months or so, because it's a rechargeable battery. Hold on. And it will have to be recharged daily on a device that looks like that, and you screw that in to the charging thing which you get in your pack, or it might look like that, which is a tiny little charger that you put in your computer. But the better system is to have a wall plug, so that you plug that into your wall and your battery charges on the end of the wall charger and a cord. That is a better way of recharging batteries. But often in a new pack for a starter pack, you might get something like that. And that's all right, excepting I prefer the wall plug chargers because they don't drain your electricity off your computer. And I think a wall plug is safer. So once you've bought your starter pack, you might also find in it what we call a clearomiser. This is a tank. It's a tank of clear plastic that you put on the end of your Ego battery. In the tank, you put your e-liquid. So you open the top of the tank, and often you will get a tank in with your starter pack, and you might even get some e-liquid. So that e-liquid needs to be put, that e-liquid needs to be put in your tank. So you unscrew the child-proof lid, and the e-liquid should be in a child-proof plastic bottle. You tip your tank and you pour the e-liquid in down the side of your tank, and then you replace the drip tip on the top of your tank, which is now full of e-liquid. And often new vapors start with tobacco flavor because that's what they're used to. But you don't have to. You can start with strawberries and cream or blueberry or any flavor that takes your fancy. Only a warning, don't try from the beginning to have nicotine-less electronic liquid, because you will feel a lack. You will feel something wanting as you draw on your electronic cigarette, because you'll be missing the nicotine. So If you are just beginning vaping and you have an ego battery and a tank and you want to buy e-liquid, and some people call it e-juice, though I never do. If you are buying e-liquid for the first time and you're a heavy smoker, buy an e-liquid with a decent quantity of nicotine in it, like 24, or if you're a very heavy smoker, 36. Otherwise, when you've put it in your tank, it will not satisfy you physically. So you might have to go out and buy a tank in a plastic wrapper from some vendor. This is a purple tank, and this one is brand new. I'm going to open it and use it sometime in the future. So you might have a brand new tank which you put on your ego and then you fill. If you are a heavy smoker, you fill with some decent quantity of nicotine in the e-liquid. If you're a very light smoker, you can start possibly with 18 milligrams of nicotine in your e-liquid, or 1.8%, as it often is written nowadays. I started with 18 milligrams of nicotine in my e-liquid, and I have occasionally gone over that to 24, but mostly now I'm vaping 18 or 16, and my own e-liquids, which I mix myself, are often 12 milligrams of nicotine or less. So I've talked about the battery. The battery being an ego battery, and you can get them in all sizes, all shapes even, and you can get them in all colors and patterns and decorated and silver and gold and all sorts of fancy nice bling stuff that I like. These clearomisers that you buy have a black drip tip on them, and unfortunately you cannot put your own drip tip on. Now what do I mean with that? This is another kind of clearomiser, and this has got a drip tip that I can pull off the top. The drip tip is the thing that makes it look neat and nice. So here is another drip tip. This is a grey fancy drip tip. I can put that on that, and then I have my personal unique tank with my own drip tip on the top. But the clearomisers that you buy that go with your ego starter kit, most of them will just have an ordinary black top like that. One day soon, one of the manufacturers is going to make this so that we can put our own drip tips in. And if they do that, I will buy that kind. So what does this consist of? It consists of a drip tip, a plastic shaft, and this one is a rebuildable. Now this was the one I couldn't get off. Anyway, that bottom screws off, and that is what it looks like. That's the funnel that goes into the tank. And on the top of the funnel, I put one here. If it's a rebuildable, you can buy these little bits in which the atomizer sits. The atomizer is the electrical coil that heats up when you push the button on the battery. So there I have screwed in an atomizer top that's actually a top waiting for me to recoil it. So you can rebuild these at home, and then you pop that in the tank, screw it on well, fill it with e-liquid, put the black drip tip on the top, and where's my battery, and screw it on the ego. So some of the clearomisers you buy, you can actually replace the atomizer with the coil in it, the electrical coil at the top. So how it works is when you push the button on your battery, When you push the button on the battery, it's wired to send a message to the atomizer, which gets hot. The coil, the electrical coil in there gets hot. It's soaked with e-liquid from the wick. The wick is the bit, it looks like string in the top that sucks up the e-liquid, and so that is soaked and it's heated by the electrical coil, and it splits the propylene glycol or the glycol into vapor. It atomizes it, and in that is nicotine, and as you draw it in, the nicotine goes into your lungs on the water vapor, and your lungs retain some of it. One last thing, when you start vaping, you will find that you vape more than you smoked, and the reason is that smoking has chemicals in it that immediately unlocks the keys in your brain that allow the nicotine to go into your brain very quickly. In e-liquid, or e-juice as some people call it, there is pure nicotine, which has been removed from the other chemicals and placed in glycerine or propylene glycol, and that pure nicotine doesn't have the key that goes into your brain to unlock your cells to allow the nicotine in. It takes much longer for nicotine to reach your system if you're vaping. New research suggests that you have to vape for about an hour, just over an hour, in order to get the same effect physically as you would if you smoked one cigarette. So you will find that you will vape more than you smoke because your body is used to higher doses of nicotine, and so you will vape to compensate for that. You will top up all the time, and that's okay, because gradually your body will lose its reliance on the nicotine and the chemicals in the cigarettes, which vapors call analogues, and your body will adjust, and you'll gradually find you're not vaping so much, or that you're vaping lower quantities of nicotine. Now the last thing, after the last thing, is that when you start vaping, you will have withdrawal symptoms. A lot of these are from withdrawing from smoking cigarettes. You might not feel too well. You might cough very badly for a week or two as your lungs are giving away all the phlegm and stuff that it's collected up over possibly years of smoking. So you might cough, you might get a dry throat, you might find you want to drink a lot. That is because e-liquid or the glycerine and the propylene glycol in the e-liquid is actually drying you out, and you might feel dehydrated. So you need to drink water. You need not to get frightened when you find that your body is actually de-stressing, decontaminating itself from all the time that you've spent smoking. So in the beginning, a lot of the symptoms that people get are from stopping smoking and not actually from the glycerine or the propylene glycol, though some people are sensitive to one or the other. And once you start vaping and you go on your new adventure, you will find out what kind of person you are, what kind of flavor turns you on, how much nicotine you really do want in your e-liquids, because all vapors, when they first start, need to experiment. So I want to say, if you're thinking of changing from analogues to vaping, blessings, good luck, stick it out, keep in touch on the forums, talk to people, Watch videos on YouTube. Learn, and you'll find it's a lovely hobby that will keep you interested for the rest of your life. Thanks for vaping with me.